What's up, everyone? It's Tyler Treadway from the Max Effort Muscle team. I'm the director of sports performance. Today, I'm joined by Coach Alan Burr. Coach Burr, why don't you intro yourself real quick so you can let the audience know who you are?
Yeah, my name is Alan Burr. I'm currently the Triple H strength and conditioning coach with the Pittsburgh Pirates. This is my 10th season with the Pirates, with the last 5 being in Triple A. And then prior to that, I've been up and down the East Coast, within the college realm, from Connecticut to Georgia, and um, spent undergrad and grad school in the state of North Carolina. So
Very nice. Did you play baseball growing up?
just growing up all the way through high school, and that's it.
Okay.
So
So, what made you kind of choose the career path that you went down?
it first started out like, as every strength coach gets to that point in their career where they end up getting fired, and um, the search began to try to find something new. And within that, came the Pittsburgh Pirates, and um, it kind of stuck. Like it's been, an awesome 10 years with the staff and the team that we've kind of built here, um, and it's been great. And I don't see myself leaving.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Like, what was the biggest thing when you came into the organization that you weren't really used to that kind of like wowed you and something that just really stuck out to you as setting them different from everybody else that you'd done before?
Well, you get to the habit of like you're being in the college realm, and everything's timed and everything's very super disciplined. And the big thing that stuck out to me is like it's hard to do that with professional athletes. There's certain standards and expectations that you can set up front. But like, that's what I struggle with. I'm like, hey, these guys aren't making their times. Like, what do I do? Do I send them another one? He's like, no, you can't do that. Like, so there's that set of discipline and the expectations that you can set forward. And, but, in terms of volume intensity, and there's a certain standard that we can uphold because these guys are playing every day, and that was another big drastic change. You go, baseball in college from 4 days a week. Now you're playing every day, and travels on top of that. So managing the workload from these players was a big, something big to handle too.
Yeah, so we can tackle it two ways. The first way is the mental aspect of it. So when you get to that level, they're triple A, so they're ready to go. Like they're not really ready to spend any more time in the minor leagues. They're ready to make it to the big leagues. So
Mhm.
how do you kind of manage that mentality of putting in your time, doing what you need to, and just, living in the moment and doing what you need to get to that next level?
I mean, a lot of what I will do here, it's more or less I'm here to help these guys out, because a lot of guys, especially our free agent guys, they have a good routine set. They have a good pre-day routine, and I'll guide them through their conditioning and their lifting. Um, when the questions arise, but it is all about being ready, because at some point in time, like, you never know when that phone call will ring. It could be at midnight, and we need somebody in Pittsburgh the next day, ready to go. But it's for me, it's a lot of the psychological aspect of it. Like, building that valuable relationship with these players. That way, that when things do arise, and when things come up, I'm there to help them out and guide them in the correct way. So from a mentality standpoint, being ready to go every day, like you have to have that valuable relationship with these guys, and get the most out of them on a daily basis. So
Yeah. Is it difficult to build that relationship with them when you see so many guys coming in and out of the lineup, going different places? Maybe they're going down for rehab, or maybe they're going up to the big leagues. Is it hard to kind of build that trust and create buy-in?
I've set forward like every spring training, knowing that at least for the last 5 years coming into spring training, like I have a idea of who I'm gonna have. Like,
Yeah.
hey, these are the free agent guys. These are guys on the brink of making it, or being at AAA. You just don't know. But taking 4 to 6 weeks that we have in spring training, and like that's my goal, is to build these relationships then. So when the time comes and the season's there, like I know pretty much everybody in Pittsburgh and everybody that's in AAA, and the guys that were invited to spring training in AA, and that way like it's just an easy transition up and down, and at some point in time I'll see them all. But that's the mentality I've set forward in spring training is I have to get to know these guys. I have to build a relationship early and often, and that way, when the season does come, it's pretty seamless.
Yeah. So the second part of that is the performance piece. So how difficult is it to manage that many guys throughout that long of a season?
Yeah, I mean, it becomes tricky, but like there's certain guidelines that we've set forward as an organization in terms of like, position players lifting twice a week or a minimum of twice a week, and like the relief pitchers are a lot of times when they throw in games, it may be that night or it may be the next day, and starters are probably your easiest group because, I mean, they're set in stone. Their routine's set in stone. When they're lifting, what type of conditioning there is. It's the other guys, the guys that are playing every day, like of manipulating volume and intensity throughout the week. And a lot of with these position players, we've kind of gone to the 6 days a week mentality and just kind of micro dose their workload. We'll come in, we'll get some range of motion done. We'll do some coordination, and we'll hit a squat and a glute ham, and that's it. They're ready to go to the cage. So it's a combination of their prep and their lift all together. That way, because in the past, as I've kind of gone through the years, it's you can't expect these guys to do 45 minutes to an hour if they're playing every day. They're on the field at 2:00 and they're practicing for 2.5 hours, and they got to play a 2.5, 3 hour game that night and do it all over again the next day. So with the position players, it's kind of microdosing and minimizing their overall workload, at least in the weight room. And the relievers, it's, whether they throw, it's usually going to be a lift, and we try to use that as their competition piece, and we'll recover the next day. So we waive that. If they're hot that night, if they're going to throw that night, then we're going to do some sort of sprint agility type conditioning. And if they've pitched the night before, then we're going to do some recovery type work. So
yeah. And so how does that differ from where you are in your training philosophies and that mindset versus where you were when you came into the organization? Are you still pretty much the same, or have you picked up a lot throughout the years?
I've picked up a lot. The philosophy has stayed the same. It's how that gets done has differed. Like we were, I wouldn't say adamant, but like we were involved in like, we were running type of a modified conjugate with pretty much everybody. We were going, a max effort lower body of whatever, their choice, whether back squat, deadlift, and then we were doing some sort of speed element on their second day. Now we still do that. It's just now spread over the course of 6 days. And that's kind of how we've adapted, and that's how I kind of came in with it. So the goal of being strong and, having good coordination patterns and being able to move, it's all there. It's just kind of a different thought process behind it now. And instead of it all being gung-ho, hey, we're going to, deadlift 500 pounds a day, it's more velocity based. And hey, we're still going to max effort today, but it's going to be, 0.5 meters per second. So of what you can handle for that, of your 100% for that day. And that's kind of how I'll manipulate it throughout the year. So,
yeah. So you talk about using the conjugate system. I know that you looked up to Louie Simmons. So did you have any chances to like sit down with him and talk to him and learn from him, pick his brain?
I had one opportunity. We had just bought some equipment, and we were still kind of in talks with him. And we play in Columbus quite a bit. So I think in 2018, we went over there, me and the athletic trainer, and got to jump in with the 7 a.m. crew, which was beyond anybody's wildest dreams, in terms of like what that atmosphere sets. And but Louis being Louis took the time after we were done and walked us through a bunch of equipment and how to utilize this and his thoughts with baseball. And that's kind of where like the pulling sleds for position players kind of came in. And once we were talking to him, because again, with the manipulation of volume and intensity of position players, like the consistency, if the consistency is not there, and like, hey, I really don't want to be sore, well, I got you. Like I can get two birds with one stone. We can get some good GPP done with the sleds. We can get some strength work, and you're not going to be sore the next day. So like he kind of threw that out there, and I kind of picked up and ran with that, pulling the sled. So that was awesome to sit down with him, and in terms of like his thoughts on oblique injuries and things like that. So
yeah, not many people get the chance to kind of sit down and pick Louis' brain and get to understand really what the conjugate system's about. Um, has there been anybody else that you've kind of drawn inspiration from and picked up some pieces from them and kind of adapted it to your own way?
I mean, I try to pick and choose and develop as I come along. I mean, like when I was coming up, I mean, it was the likes of Jeff Dillman at Appalachian State when I was there, in terms of like the intensity that he brought on a daily basis. And I've kind of taken that with me. We're in the midst of a lot of the FRC stuff right now, and what Dr. Spina's doing and how that's helping the game of baseball right now in terms of what we're doing from our range of motion. But a lot of it, like probably the last 10 years, it's come from Louis, and it's come from, West Side, and, how conjugate runs and how we've adapted it to the game of baseball. And I think it's kind of working out pretty well.
Yeah, and I'm sure the players love that because exactly what they need more than they do. Um, so from that standpoint, like, do the players love like training? Do they love that part of it? Because like I think back to when I was playing, like I was never a high level athlete. But that's why I started to become, in the strength industry and the sports performance stuff, because you want to pass along those lessons to the kids, but sometimes it just doesn't stick. Do you ever have that issue? Or are they at such a high level that they're like, okay, this is what I have to do to get to the next level?
A lot of them are like that. And now there's some out there that, like that really don't love training. I mean, you have lives, or, you have guys from the DR, you have guys from Taiwan that their lifestyles are different, and their thoughts on training are completely different. And a lot of them are like, hey, this is the game of baseball. We're just like anything, like even with college, like we're support staff when it comes to that. And but you have your old school guys that are, that grew up football or played in college, that had that training background, that really enjoy getting in there and lifting. And then there's others that we have to slow play, like we have to really really take our time with them. The guys from the DR, that the training age is, they get to us and their training age is 0. They've never done anything. So I would say it's probably half and half, and I think everybody, or all the players, think they need to some extent, and there's others that think they need to get away with, or can get away with it. But I think eventually down the road they'll realize that how important it is to get in there and to do something, or whatever that may be. So
Yeah. Is it hard? Because you get these guys who they might have gotten there, like you said, and their training age is 0, but obviously they're an extraordinary athlete. If they can get to that AAA level, they're one step away from the big leagues, but their training age is 0. Is it hard to kind of mix those two together? Because like you said, they've already got a supreme skill. And so sometimes they're a little bit reluctant to get it, but how do you start them out? Because do you just start them with the basics of the conjugate method?
um, we've kind of like, so I mean, they won't have a training age of 0 when they get to me usually. By that time they're in the system. If they get drafted at 16, they're in the system for probably 4 to 6 years before they get to me, and we'll start them off with uh, like a rookie development program, and it's basic movements and coordination skills, and then ease them into at that, like some sort of like tiered level system where like level one we're working on this, level two we're working on that, um, and where we see fit. But they're in that for a year or two until they kind of graduate out of that, and then we're getting into your traditional style lifting. But um, and that's kind of how we start them out. Like we'll start them in some rookie development, and we'll piece it together and see what they're good at, what they're not, and what we can improve on. And then we kind of slowly get them into your more traditional style lifting from there.
Is it hard to manage the guys on the road? Like, because when you're back home, you have access to all the stuff and you can run the program the best way that you can. But when you're on the road, you have to get a little creative. Is that difficult?
The last couple of years, it has been super creative. Even early on, like we had access, and every team, had a partnership with a local gym. Like where we were able to go, and you don't really know what they're going to have.
Mhm.
It may be one rack, it may be a bunch of machines, it may be a full setup where we can get everything done that we need to. Sometimes it's even in the hallway, to where I try to bring as much stuff as I can, that space allows, whether it's TRX and dumbbells and kettlebells and a full set of power blocks and trap bar, because at this day and age with COVID, a lot of these teams have lost their partnership, so we're working out in hallways or wherever we can find space. And we've kind of, even last year and the year before with COVID, like we were bringing a whole trunk setup that folded out into a rack, and a barbell that broke down, and we're bringing 300 pounds of weight, and that's what we had. So we're slowly getting back to being able to go to gyms, but it's a lot of manipulation of what we want to try to get done, and we do it to the best that we can. And we sometimes treat it as a, hey, we're going to unload this week because we don't have a whole lot, and then we'll get back to it the next week when we get home. So
Yeah, that's kudos to you for doing that, because you know everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, and you might show up and there's nothing, and you have to create from scratch because you got to keep your guys on a schedule, and you have everybody, they're at different points in their programs and stuff like that. So I can't imagine trying to manage all that. So going away from the athletes a little bit, what keeps you motivated and kind of pushing? Because I'm sure a lot of guys get to the point where you're at. You've been with the organization for 10 years, but clearly you're still doing it, you're still learning. What kind of motivates you to keep pushing through and being the best that you can be?
I mean, the big thing is always trying to chase that dream of getting to the major leagues, and doing whatever I can to get there. And my first and foremost, like what gets me up in the morning is how can I help how these players. Like I've had, there's new players every year, and seeing them get to live out their dream of playing Major League Baseball, like it's nothing else. Like sitting down and like getting guys that are seeing guys that are getting called up for the first time, and actually uh, watching guys this year and being there when they made their debuts. Like you can't beat that. You can't beat that feeling, like of having watched this guy battle in and out and year after year, and and you build those relationships with those guys, and then they get that final call and they get their call up, and they it changes a lot of people's lives. And like there's not a better feeling than seeing that. And that's ultimately like what pushes me every day. Like it's I'm here for them and nothing else. So I'm going to steady learn, and everybody's got a different background, and everybody's seen this and seen that. So like the knowledge comes from, like I have to know a little bit about a lot of things, because everybody's different. Everybody comes from a different background, and whatever way that I can help them and adjust their training based on that and get them to where they need to be, like that's the ultimate goal. So
Yeah, you're like their go-to guy, because you have to be the guy that does everything to prep them, and you're getting them to live out their reality. Like that's what they've dreamed their whole lives about, what they've been
Yeah.
working for. That's amazing. So what ways are you kind of looking into now into the future? Like, is it performance based? Like, what are you trying to learn about now? Because, we all kind of go through those phases where it's like, well, I need to study a little bit more on these training methods, or maybe I'm learning about breath work, technique, recovery, stuff like that.
Well, I try to split it down the middle. So like we'll have like throughout the year, like our coordinators kind of set up like 6 week increments of like, hey, this is your personal goal. This is a professional goal, and kind of like have checkpoints throughout the way. But the big piece that I've worked on throughout the year is really watching video and watching how these players move and kind of mimicking that back to the weight room. Like, because ultimately it's about performance on the field. So, like, you know, trying to break down a swing or trying to break down a throwing mechanic and what they're lacking or what they're missing, and working hand in hand with the on-field coaches of how I can help take stress and load off their body by helping them in the weight room. Like, whether it's like if a guy is having trouble hinging and loading into his back leg on a swing, like how can I do that without them ultimately taking 100 or 200 more swings with a bat? Like, can I do that with a med ball? Can I do that with an aqua bag? So that's kind of a lot that I've worked on this year, like breaking down videos and watching how guys move, and what can we pull from that. And then the other piece is like I've still working through some sprint mechanics and speed mechanic type work, trying to gain more knowledge within the functional ring system. So and honestly, like right now there's a big competition within the organization about like learning Spanish and or learning a language of your choice. So like that's kind of big right now too. So
Yeah, you have to be the jack of all trades.
yeah, and that's usually like the mornings are set aside, like especially when my family's not in town, like set aside, like I'll check, hey, I'm gonna take an hour to do Spanish today, and then I'm gonna do an hour of this before my training, and that's where I get the bulk of my kind of continuing ed work done throughout the year.
Yeah. So real quick, I know you're on a time crunch, and you're a very busy guy, so I want to be respectful of your time. So, two takeaways that you could provide to your younger self, like what advice could you give? If you could, there's going to be people that are in your position, or I'm sorry, they're going to be 10 years before looking to be in your position 10 years from now. What advice would you give them or to your younger self? And then what advice would you give to like that 16-year-old athlete? Because we were all there at one point. We all start out as athletes and we all think that we're going to make it to the next level, but we're probably not doing the things that we need to do that will separate us from the rest of the pack. So what's one thing that you would piece of advice you would give to a younger coach and then a younger player as well?
I mean, I think the biggest advice I look back on myself as a younger coach, like, is to reach out and be involved and try to learn from as many different people as you can. And you can't be afraid to kind of extend that network and get out there. And like, I always relied on like the people that were around me that I thought could get me places. And it's really about how what people that and like extend yourself, learn from people, learn from different areas, learn from the business aspect. Or like, you can't just be super involved in like strength and conditioning, because at this point in my career, it's really not. Like, it's about leadership and mentorship and like building relationships. Like, the X's and O's are one thing, but like it's the other aspects that kind of at this point in time, like, that really have been carrying myself. So like, don't be afraid to get outside of the network of strength and conditioning to kind of increase your value as a coach. Um,
Yeah, I think a lot of people they get into coaching for like the X's and O's, and they want to be that guy that's just like, oh, I know the most about the game, or I know most about strength and conditioning. But that's great. But if you can't market yourself and be a relationship person, you're not going to get anywhere. And that at the end of the day, coaching just comes down to relationships and valuing other people and valuing their time, valuing their education, their knowledge, and things like that.
Yeah, no, that's 100%. And I was uh, versed in like the books and the textbooks, and not reaching out and not expanding what I know. And honestly, like, I didn't really get that until I got here with the Pirates, where they were really big on developing the person, whether it was a coach or the player, and not leaving any stone unturned, as far as like, we're going to do whatever we can to get this guy to the major leagues. And that kind of, it bled over into the staff as well, of like, professional development, thinking outside the box in terms of like, hey, what can we do here, what can we do there. So I really I didn't get that understanding until I got here with the Pirates. So
Yeah, that's awesome. So what would you give advice to a younger athlete?
I mean, the biggest thing, and like, I dabble in some like youth training in the off seasons and stuff, and like the biggest thing I see is it's we gotta, again, kind of branch out again to continue to play different sports, and instead of playing on your third travel team, maybe take some time to do strength and conditioning. It's the resiliency of the body that's gonna ultimately kind of get you there. And if we're steady playing sports year round and not taking a break, and not building up the resiliency of the body, like, it's going to take its toll eventually. So I think take the time to value a strength and conditioning, a good strength and conditioning program, instead of playing a third travel team, or something of that nature. So like, I think that's a big piece, and that's kind of what I see with the youth population, where I'm at. Like, it's play all the time, and it's not, kind of take a step back, and do other things that can help you with your game, right? Like, if we can help you become more coordination, like more coordinative, or stronger, or more mobile, ultimately that's going to help your game in the long run too, because now you are more resilient. You try to hold off injuries as long as you can. So you just steady can't go and play the game without taking a step back and kind of building. The biggest thing that you can work on is you, in terms of how you can play. So
Yeah, and I coach soccer, and I played soccer and baseball my whole life, and they're very similar in the fact that all the kids just want to play that year round. So for me, it was playing basketball that would make me better at baseball, because it's different moving, and then soccer is completely different from baseball. But these kids now, it's like you're playing baseball year round, and then you're getting burnt out by the time you're 16, 17, or you're playing soccer until you're done with high school, and then you kind of lose your purpose. It's like you have to branch out and kind of find the different things that work for you, and just become a more well-rounded person.
absolutely, yeah. And it's throwing, just kind of throwing things out there that allow your kids to try different things, whether it's track and cross country, and learn aspects of speed, and mechanical running, or like karate, or wrestling, or jujitsu. Any of those type of things can be valuable down the road. And even though you may not think so, at a younger age, like, you feel like you have to play baseball all the time, like, just branch out and try different things, because ultimately, like, it's gonna pay off. So
Yeah. All right, so real quick, last thing. Sorry, I told you the last one was gonna be the last thing, but
you're good.
what does max effort mean to you? What is giving max effort? Um,
Ultimately, it's giving what you got every day. Like, I mean, like I was kind of saying earlier, like, your max effort today may be only 80%, but you got to give me your 80%. And and that's it. It fits true with the game of baseball, because like, it's long, it's grueling, and you're playing every day. Like, you have to wake up and give what you got for that day. Like, and you're not always going to be at 100%. And so, like, your max effort for today may be 80, but let's give me 80%. Like it. So I look at it like that. I look at max effort being like, you got to give me everything you got for today, because ultimately, like under the lights, like we're looking for or a W every night. So that's how I perceive it.
Yeah. Well, Coach, I appreciate your time. Real quick, do you want to let everybody listening know where they can find you at and learn more about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Instagram, Twitter. I believe it's SC Coach underscore Burr on like Instagram, Facebook, and even Twitter. Um, but yeah, so I think they're pretty much all the same handle across the board. But
Awesome, Coach. Well, I thank you for your time and good luck the rest of the season.
awesome, I appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.